When you start a gas-powered car, the energy moving those pistons comes directly from the deep past. You are literally combusting the ghosts of a prehistoric world. The vast majority of the coal, oil, and natural gas we extract today was laid down during a specific block of deep time, the Paleozoic era. Between 541 and 252 million years ago, the Earth drafted the physical blueprints for our own bodies. Your spine, your jaw, and the limbs that carry you trace directly back to structural designs tested in these ancient waters. To understand the Earth we live on today, from the biology you see in the mirror to the climate crisis in the news, we have to look at how this ancient operating system was built and how it violently burned down. If you traveled back 541 million years to the start of the Cambrian period, you would likely be dead in minutes. You would find zero life on land, just bare, wind-swept rock. The air itself would suffocate you, holding only 5 to 10% oxygen. It was a deeply hostile environment, made even harsher by stellar evolution. The ancient sun was about 4 to 6% dimmer than it is today. Under normal conditions, the Earth should have been a frozen, solid ball of ice. What kept the water liquid was a massive greenhouse blanket. Carbon dioxide levels sat at over 3,000 parts per million. Complex animals weren't dropped into a ready-made paradise. They emerged onto a harsh, alien planet. And over millions of years, they would have to terraform it themselves. The laboratory for this early life was created by shifting tectonic plates. Global sea levels rose dramatically, spilling over the passive edges of the continents and flooding their interiors. These new shallow seas were warm, bathed in sunlight, and nutrient-rich. This perfect incubator triggered an evolutionary storm known as the Cambrian explosion. In a geologically brief window of perhaps 20 million years, nearly every major animal body plan appeared in the fossil record. Before this point, life consisted mostly of passive, soft-bodied organisms. Then, nature invented the predator. Creatures like Anomalocaris began hunting, which forced soft prey to pull calcium carbonate out of the water to build heavy armor. You can see the results of this biological arms race permanently etched in stone. These trilobites mineralized their bodies, spending massive amounts of metabolic energy on thick shells simply to avoid being eaten. The invention of the skeleton and the shell was essentially a biological military defense contract, shaping the fundamental anatomy of life. You have likely seen the famous illustration of a brave fish crawling onto dry land. Evolution doesn't plan ahead like that. Look at Acanthostega, an animal that lived 360 million years ago. It had 8-fingered hands, but it also retained internal gills, and its hips were far too weak to support its own weight out of the water. Limbs and fingers evolved entirely underwater to act as four-wheel drive for navigating dense, weed-choked swamps. This is known as exaptation. Evolution blindly hacked existing anatomy to solve an immediate underwater problem, accidentally building the precise biological tools that would allow animals to conquer the land millions of years later. While animals were navigating the swamps, terrestrial plants were engineering the climate. As they colonized the land, they evolved deep roots that secreted acids to chemically break down solid rock for nutrients. This rock weathering process acts like a planetary vacuum cleaner. It chemically pulls carbon dioxide out of the air, converts it into bicarbonate, and washes it down river systems into the ocean. By the Carboniferous period, terrestrial plants developed another major innovation: lignin. They grew tall, rigid trunks of solid wood. At the time, decomposers like fungi and bacteria hadn't yet evolved the enzymes to digest this new tough fiber. Because they couldn't be eaten, the dead trees didn't rot. Millions of generations of wood piled up in massive swamps, locking away their carbon. Global CO2 plummeted and oxygen levels shot past 25%. When we mine for coal today, we're hacking directly into these ancient, compressed layers of petrified wood that refuse to decay. Simple biological life had taken control of the climate system. By burying the greenhouse blanket deep underground, life engineered the cool, oxygen-rich world we eventually inherited. But 252 million years ago, this biological masterpiece was violently dismantled. The end Permian extinction, known as the Great Dying, wiped out 96% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. The trigger was a geological anomaly known as the Siberian Traps. This was an unrelenting flood of basalt that poured 1.5 million cubic kilometers of lava across the continent. The lava itself didn't destroy the biosphere. The catastrophe was a matter of horrific placement. The massive magma plume punched directly through underground basins packed with Paleozoic coal and salt deposits. The Earth had essentially drilled into its own massive buried fossil fuel reserve and set it on fire, converting a stable climate into a lethal greenhouse. This chart tracks the resulting geochemical kill chain. The burning coal injected massive volumes of CO2 directly into the atmosphere. Over a geological instant, global temperatures recorded a vertical spike of 8 degrees Celsius, subjecting land animals to fatal hyperthermia. As the atmosphere baked, the oceans absorbed the heat. Because hot water holds significantly less dissolved gas than cold water, marine circulation stalled. The oceans literally suffocated. Finally, the oceans absorbed the excess atmospheric carbon, turning the water into carbonic acid. Marine organisms couldn't build their skeletons. Their shells simply dissolved in the corrosive water. Breaching these specific geochemical thresholds triggered a cascading, multi-system planetary failure. When the dust settled, the diverse ecosystems were gone, and the Earth was temporarily inherited by fungi feeding on the dead. These are the mechanics of the Great Dying. A rapid injection of carbon dioxide, causing extreme warming, ocean deoxygenation, and severe acidification, are exactly what scientists track in our oceans and atmosphere today. When we extract these ancient deposits to fuel our power grids, we are unearthing the biological storage systems of the Paleozoic era and actively pumping that sequestered carbon back into the sky. Through heavy industry, humanity is replicating the chemical shock of the Siberian Traps. We have become the flood basalt, manually triggering a rapid greenhouse event. But there is a crucial difference. A blind volcano cannot comprehend the data it leaves behind. We have the ability to read the rock record, recognize the limits of our biosphere, and choose to change course before we burn our own habitable world to the ground.